I will also say in advance that this meeting is gonna be recorded and it's gonna be put on the Catalyst website and as well on YouTube. So yeah, just to let you know. Hello, everybody. Welcome. It's an honor to be here. I think we can slowly start. I will firstly show you an introductory video about Catalyst 2030 before I will hand over to the main speakers. So Yes, let me share the video very shortly.
Catalyst 2030 started life as a WhatsApp group among social entrepreneurs, connecting to envision real transformational change. Launched at the World Economic Forum in January 2020, it's grown into a global movement accelerating change to ensure the SDGs are reached by 2030. Fueled by passion, our 550 members working in 175 countries have collectively put in an amazing 50,000 volunteer hours, touching the lives of 2 billion people. And we're driven by values, to which we hold ourselves accountable. 2020 was a busy year, co-creating 3 reports with partners and producing one of our own. Inviting high-level guests to participate in the Catalyzing Change campaign, hosting fireside chats and expert hours, which will be continuing in 2021. To celebrate our achievements, together we placed our supporters in the limelight with the first Catalyst 2030 Awards for Systemic Change. With the blessing of the Dalai Lama, we celebrated finalists and winners in the following categories: special recognition for our early supporters, individual philanthropists, donor organizations, philanthropic intermediaries, corporate organizations, bi- and multilateral organizations, and 4 regional winners in the category of national governments. And now on to Catalyzing Change Week 2021. During this social entrepreneur-led event, we bring together diverse stakeholders in over 100 sessions to showcase their systems change efforts and the best practices that can accelerate our work in pursuit of the SDGs.
Thank you so much. I will hand it over to the main speakers.
Thank you so much, Corina, and welcome everybody for our talk today. So I will just share my slides. Okay, let's begin. So thank you everyone who joined us today, and all of those of you who will be watching us later on the YouTube or on the website. We are Rural Senses, and we are a social enterprise that came together in order to solve one of the biggest problems that facing social entrepreneurs today, those who try to address global challenges. And this problem is that the geographic distance that exists many times between the people in developing countries, in rural communities, in remote locations, and many people that are trying to build solutions for these rural communities, or to work with them in order to create better solutions to all the challenges. And the reality is that because of this geographical distance and cultural distance, many times there is a gap between what the people care about, what the communities care about, what they want, their needs, and what projects deliver. And this gap often creates solutions that are not sustainable, not used, and we are here to solve this. I want to introduce my colleagues here today. So here with me today is Josephine Tumasige, the Rural Census Uganda Country Manager, Costanza Conforti, Head of AI, and myself, the Managing Director. We, as you can see, met a few years ago in the University of Cambridge, where we thought about all kinds of problems and solutions, and ended up starting this social enterprise. So now, after this brief introduction of us, I want to invite everyone here to introduce yourself. So this is a very friendly space, so don't be shy, and write here on the chat, and I invite you to write your name, where in the world you're calling from today, what brought you here to this session specifically, And if there's anything else you want to share, your organization, your mood today, feel free to do that. So I'll give everyone a few moments to share on the chat, just to give each other a nice feeling that you know who's with you on this group. Wonderful. Thank you, Ben and Anand, for starting this conversation. I invite everyone else to also share. Those of you who feel comfortable, I also invite you to open your video, just to give everyone a feeling of a small community that we are creating here. In Catalyst 2030, we are all about the community. Thank you, Joaquin. Thank you, Ben. Okay, please keep the introductions coming. Yeah, wonderful. Deep from India. Hi, Deep. Welcome. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So please keep going. I will move forward. And we're talking today about data, about interaction. Data is eventually a form of interaction between entities. And eventually the data that we are looking at and we're talking about is data that's meant to help us understand each other, help us understand different people. So I want to start with a small experiment. And this experiment will be, again, looking at our little group today as a community. And we will try to understand what are what's the situation of this community, to try to understand maybe some of the needs or the perceptions of this community. And we're specifically going to look into housing and living conditions. So we all live in different places in different locations. This is specifically a photo of the town where I live. This is Yafo in Israel. So quite a nice and very diverse area with all kinds of buildings, shapes, and houses. And I want to understand what are the living conditions of the people in this group, in our little group today. So what I will ask everyone to do is to pick up your phone, your mobile phone, and go on slido.com. This is a website you can go on from any mobile phone connected to the internet. And then you will be able to put this passcode 744323. And we'll ask you really simple questions. And all of the questions are anonymous, so we'll not know what was your answer to these very simple questions. And I invite you to answer the first question, which is, how many rooms are there in your home? So wherever home you live in, how many rooms do you have? And you can include all the shower, the kitchen, all the rooms that are considered a room. And Corina, you're also welcome to answer. Everyone basically here. And I'll give you a few moments. I see 7 people already answered, so I see 8. So please, everyone, keep it going. It will be really interesting at the end. So it would be really great if everybody can participate. Good, I see we are 25 people here, so I'll let at least half of the people a chance to participate. Okay, we passed half, so we'll take a few more moments. Yes. Okay, wonderful. Good. So those of you who didn't have the chance yet, or if you have any technical challenge, feel free to write on the chat, and we will help you address this challenge if you have an issue. Okay, so it's time to reveal the results. I see that we have here majority of over 7 rooms in the home. It's good. It's nice. It's quite a lot, probably. Really considering all the toilets and small bathrooms and stuff, that makes sense. But other than that, quite a big distribution, around 5 and 6 rooms. So well done, very interesting, good results, good data we're getting here. And now I have another question for you. How many people live in your house? So if we talked before about how many rooms, now I want to ask how many people live. So please, everyone, I welcome you to reply. How many people live in your home, including you? Good, so I see we're very fast now. We got the drill, so we can go ahead and share. Share the results. Okay, 2 to 3, 4, 6. Okay, wonderful. So quite an interesting results we've got here with relatively small households you get here, but also some distribution here in the top. That's wonderful. So from this, I can, as the developer of this housing project that's meant, I want to understand what are the living conditions of people, I can already understand some things about this little community that is here on Zoom today. So I can understand what's the size of the houses and the number of people in each household. Okay, so it's good, valuable information. But now I want to explore a different type of data, and that will be the qualitative data. So again, using the same app, okay, I just need to, so using the same app, I will now ask you to choose 7 words that describe the house where you live in. So I'll just need to reset the results from our previous session, but you can already start thinking about 7 words that, perfect. Just gonna reset the results. 7 words that describe the home you live in. So don't be lazy and really think of 7 words that describe your home. And yeah, every time you pick up a word, you need to click enter. Just note about that. Okay. Good. So give us some time, because sometimes it takes a little bit more time to think about these type of answers. Good. Big, small, comfortable. And again, you can be very, very honest, because there's no way we can track who said what. So really be sure to share whatever comes across when you think about your home. 7 words. Ant infested. Good. I see some really good stuff here. Playful, dark, warm, cozy, well located. That's so important. Functional, busy. Well done. Please keep it going. Comfortable. So many people. And by the way, the bigger the word, it means the more people chose it. So the word comfortable was chosen by quite a few people. So that's good news. Cozy, small, but also the word noisy was chosen by quite a few people. Love, oh, luxurious, poor construction quality. Okay, wonderful. So please keep it coming. And now, me as the planner in this experiment, of this housing project, there is such a big difference between the data, the type of data that I get when I ask the first 2 questions that were quantitative, that were about numbers, and the data I get here. Although it took me pretty much the same amount of time and the same amount of effort to ask these questions. And here I get data that is almost like a story. And it gives me a different view about these housing conditions and about what we should or can do about this situation. And what would happen if I would ask any one of you to also explain each word. So why noisy? Why small? Why is it colorful? Why is it traditional? That would be interesting to learn. What in your home makes it traditional? And imagine what we can understand once we go into this other type of data, which is more qualitative. And if I'm planning a project far, far away from me, with different communities that are different from me, what will be most useful for me? Is it the quantitative data or the qualitative data? And we will stop here, but just in the interest of time, but we were thinking to do the same experiment also with other questions like around the pandemic. So imagine quantitative answers relative to qualitative about feelings, about our experiences, what kind of information we would get from there. So that's really nice in our little experiment, but it's also very needed. And it's very well acknowledged that qualitative data is essential when we work with international development or with humanitarian response. And this is well acknowledged by many researchers and practitioners. And just 1 week ago, the UN aid chief said that humanitarian system has a problem of not listening to people. And that's in a system that is talking all about numbers. And there's a lot of data that's collected, but it's mostly quantitative. And in this interview, he mentions that they checked qualitatively and they found out that 50% of the people feel that their needs are not met by humanitarian aid. So there is a big issue and there is a big need, and it's acknowledged by people, senior people like the UN aid chief. So why are we not moving towards that more? Well, there are problems. And I want to invite now my colleague Josephine to tell us a little bit about the challenges when working with qualitative data.
Thank you very much, Yao. I hope everyone can hear me. Thank you for joining us, wherever you are, whether in the morning, afternoon, or evening, as your time. Josephine Tumosige is my name, and as I was introduced before, I do most of my work in Uganda, which happens to be in East Africa, and one of the countries that is receives most of the international help. Or we've had some wars, and they're, of course, under development. We are a developing country. And I lead most of the data research in the field, whether in Uganda or in remote places in elsewhere, like in Nepal, in Asia. And as you can see from what the picture is trying to show, is that we are reaching areas that's either in Africa or in Asia where there are very many difficulties to reach, especially in terms of there's no road transport a lot, which is enjoyed either in developing countries. Most cases, the roads are seasonal, kind of like currently now in Uganda, it's a rainy season. So some places you cannot reach because just the bridge broke, or whatever was being used as a bridge. So that area is cut off. So likely you will not reach it. Next thing, you may reach there, but there's no internet access, which most of the methods that are moving into modern technology, we are assuming that everybody has access, but there's no internet access at all. So when you're collecting data, you may not connect it to the server directly. You may have to collect it for several days and then upload it when you're to a town which has some internet access. Then we also make an assumption that people are literate. They have gone to school, either formal or formally, and they can read and write, which is not also true in most of these communities. Some people cannot read and write, but they can. So good enough, you only get speech, which is qualitative data. They can't speak about themselves in their natural language, but the other, they cannot write it, they cannot read it. So those are some of the challenges. So all these challenges have to be taken into consideration as we reach these societies. And importantly, the need, most of the humanitarian aid or international development is targeting these people. These are the people who want to come out of a certain level of what we call poverty into some development, sustainability of their lives, resilience to climate change. That the most people are affected by the climate change, floods, droughts, and they're most vulnerable because their resources or safety nets are very small. So we need to give them this backup, but they're also very difficult to reach. There are challenges in trying to collect data from them. The data collection process itself is also difficult. First of all, time, you've understood that if we cannot reach, or if you were on your way maybe to a certain area and then it rained heavily and then you got cut off immediately on your way, that means there's some days you're gonna wait somewhere for some time until the road is cleared, or they give an alternative, or you can go around to reach there. So it may take time. And then because you're in the very rural communities where that most of them people may not be speaking English, which is assumed that everybody could speak, or some global understood language. Like in Uganda, my country, there are 41 languages spoken locally, languages. So even me in some parts of the country, I cannot speak the language of that part. And now you can see how challenging is it when someone is coming to do like an organization coming from maybe Europe and is coming to work in this village. And practically, they have to find people in that village that are skilled enough to carry out this data collection. So those are some of those challenges that come in: the time, the skills, you have to do training, and most people may not find the very best people that can do this, and yet you need them because they are the only ones who can speak the local dialect, which later has to be translated into English. And in that problem also, we come now to the biases that happen when we try to do this. Biases where the information is distorted along the way, and it can happen at any time of this process. As I said, who have you employed to do the data collection? First of all, have you sampled the right people in this community, and have you defined what the community is? Because many people say, oh, they are well-wishing, they come into these villages, they want to do something, but they have failed to define what the community is, meaning what is that boundary of the people I'm trying to help? And once that definition is lacking, that means that no, you don't know who you're collecting data from, who is coming, who's that sampling space, and is the sampling size representative of the demographics of the community? There's also problems. You find that coming out, maybe they sampled, if they wanted 200 people, 150 were men. So 50 were the only women. So that data is already biased because the voices that are going to come out, or the reasoning, or whatever you were trying to find, is going to be voiced by the male, not the female perspective. Then going to, again, have you created enough awareness that everybody can do what you're competing against time, because these people have survival, they got to go farming in the morning, they have other activities. And as a data collector, have you done enough to allow them to give you that time, to part of their time, to ask them these questions? The other bias after from sampling is when you're preparing, have you respected the community's hierarchy? Because most of our communities in Africa are very traditional, in Asia, that you have to respect my father, the village chief, the what, and if you neglect all that, most likely the people going to turn up are not going to be the right people who are giving you this information. And then the interviewers, they always come in with biases. I come from maybe Kampala in Uganda. I have my preconceptions about the life in the village, or I come from Europe. I have my understanding. I have this information in my head about Africa or about Uganda that I just want to confirm. So regardless of what the person in the village tells you, you're going to just try to confirm what you thought you already knew. And that is already a bias. Another thing could be that the interviewer tries to put their own interpretation on what I've said. If I'm Uganda, okay, I'm in Uganda and Kampala, one of my challenges that sometimes I don't have light, but it's not my major necessity. The person from Europe may hear that light is my problem, but that's not what I said. I said it's not my major necessity, but sometimes I have that problem. So there's that the interviewer may put their own understanding onto what the person said, which is not protected true, so that creates a bias. And at the end of it, of course, there's the response that comes from me, who you're interviewing, or the person in the village. First of all, there are so many that can happen. In fact, you come in with modern technology that the village is not used to, that the technology may act as a stimulus that actually changes the response of the people. Or you come in with a vehicle that the village has never seen. So everybody is actually more attracted to the vehicle, and every answer is talking about the vehicle other than what you actually want to research in. And then they need, like, again, when I come back to like communities where the tradition is strong and there are some gender stereotypes, that I want to answer everything in what I think the community flows with the community, which they call social desirability bias. So you ask me a question, and if there are people around me, I'm going to always answer according to what I think the society will allow me to think that I belong to the society. I'm not going to change my answer from what everybody in the society thinks. So when you come into doing qualitative data, you have to be very aware of all these things, even remuneration. When you're trying to give cash or for the interview, you have to know, is it ethical? Am I giving it at the right time? Is it going to attract the wrong sampling sample because they've just heard that they're going to get something out of answering my questions? And all this, if the data collection process creates a lot of biases, even if the other preparations or analysis of the data and finally getting the outcomes goes well, if the source was wrong, then everything has already been distorted and the information is going to be misleading. And that's when you come to data analysis, which is also very key. And that's what we are talking about, how NLP comes in to help these processes. The data has been collected, it has gotten to our servers or wherever you need it to be in a database very well. How is it analyzed that also it keeps true to the source of the information? And that's, I'll hand it over to my colleague, Constanza or Yao to go and talk about the data analysis.
Thank you, Josie. Yeah, so I think now we came to the main kind of like part of the title of our presentation. So how can we use NLP to basically make the qualitative data that we collected in the field speak to us and tell us the story of the community we collected the data from. Okay, so I come from the academy, so I tend to start each discussion by kind of like going to the building blocks of and the definitions of what we are talking about. So natural language processing, I saw that some of you in the audience, you are already familiar with the topic, but maybe it's always useful to, as a small recap, natural language processing is an interdisciplinary field which brings together elements from three main fields: linguistics, artificial intelligence, and computer science. Natural language means human language, so language which is spoken by people, and this is in contrast with programming languages, which are not spoken by real people. And processing, the processing part of the term means that we are trying to implement computer programs that can understand language. And so we try to develop a system that can basically help us processing and structuring large amount of text, which would be sometimes impractical for a human being to manually look at and structure. Okay, so how can a computer program understand text? So to do this, we use artificial intelligence. And in particular, what we work with in rural census are deep learning based models. So you probably already heard about deep learning. It's basically a family of algorithms which use neural networks to solve problems. And they are kind of like all part of the bigger family of machine learning models. So you probably already heard of machine learning, and you maybe already know the main mechanism behind, and it's not really important here to go into details, but the main idea behind machine learning is that we implement a system that can learn to perform a specific task by generalizing over some data that we feed the system with. And this is kind of like the process of learning for a machine learning model, or in our case, a deep learning model, is called training. So if we train a system, an NLP system based on machine learning, the system becomes able to perform specific tasks, which would be time consuming and very expensive to do manually. In our case, imagine that we collected the data that Josephine was talking about from a remote village somewhere in Uganda. Now we might end up collecting, I don't know, 200, 300 qualitative interviews. This is a lot of text. And yeah, Josephine basically already told us how complicated and difficult it is to collect data. Imagine we spend like 6 months collecting the data, and now we have all our interviews, and then if we would employ real people to read all the interviews and then give us kind of like a report of what the people think, what is important to people, it might take us kind of like another 6 months, and we would end up 1 year later, and maybe the data that now we do have analyzed do not represent the kind of like community anymore. So we should think about data as a snapshot of a community in a particular moment in time and space. And clearly, if we need so much time to classify the data, then the data itself is not very useful anymore. So of course, the part about the kind of like how expensive it is to do the process is also important, but it's also important to remember the time kind of like component of these. Okay, so we were talking about tasks. So what do we mean in practice? Can we, yeah, so in particular, today we will discuss 3 tasks, 3 NLP tasks, which we looked at different stages at rural census. Podemos cambiar slide. So sentiment analysis. Okay, so this is probably the most popular NLP task ever, maybe after machine translation. So you probably already heard about it. It's pretty kind of like popular in the general public. You've heard probably in the media talking about sentiment analysis to, for example, automatically infer what people think about political candidates, for example, or yeah, to do kind of like electoral polls, or to do automatic product reviews and things like that. So with sentiment analysis, as kind of like a sentiment analyzer is a classifier, is a model that takes as input text and gives us the polarity of the text. So whether the text is positive, negative, or neutral. Now, actually, in rural census, as you can imagine, we do not really work with kind of like elections or products, but we work with kind of like interviews that we collected from people. Here we put a small example of an kind of like extract, slightly modified from one of our projects. Let's read it together. So I am old and I already gave birth to 4 children. But despite my prayers, my husband doesn't want to use a condom, which makes me fear for my life. Okay, so we can imagine that this is an old woman. As you can imagine, the likelihood of dying in childbirth can be pretty high, especially if we go in kind of like rural villages. And this woman is basically telling us that she's scared that her husband doesn't want to use birth control, and she's scared that she might also die in the future if she continued to get pregnant. And very clearly here, the sentiment of this text is negative. Now, this is kind of like one of the very first components of our kind of like bigger framework. We would like to introduce a second task, which is called stance detection. So stance means orientation. And please do interrupt me at any time if there is kind of like something that you think I'm not explaining clearly or I'm not transmitting. So stance means orientation, opinion. So we would like to develop a system which is able to automatically infer the opinion expressed with respect to a given topic in a text. And here again, people can agree, so we have a positive stance with respect to a topic, can disagree, or can be neutral. Now let's keep us analyzing our samples from the slide before. The sentiment of the text we saw is negative, but what with respect to the stance? So let's say that we would like to understand the stance of this woman with respect to birth control, so child control, contraception. I don't know if you potentially have a clue, some examples that someone would like to maybe write in the chat. So the opinion of our speaker with respect to contraception is actually positive. So the speaker we are interviewing is saying that she would like to use contraception, but she cannot. So this is interesting because here we have actually two opinions which are expressed. So the interviewer is expressing her own opinion about contraception, and this is positive. But she's also reporting the opinion of her husband with respect to the same target, and the opinion of the husband is negative. And this is interesting to know. As you can see here, we have actually two from the same kind of like short amount of text, we are able to extract automatically quite a lot of useful elements that can help us understanding what people think about something, how they orient, and how they feel about it. And those two tasks are tasks which are actually pretty popular in NLP and have been kind of like widely investigated also in the academy. The third task we would like to talk about is automatic UPV classification. Now here we dive a bit more into the sustainable development field. So yeah, basically UPV, so UPV classification is a task in which we try to automatically infer the values which are expressed in a text. And we do these starting from a taxonomy, which was developed in the field of sustainable development, and it defines 72 values, so quite a lot actually of classes that can help us describing what is important to a community. So as you can imagine, it is pretty fine-grained because 72 classes are quite a lot. And something that we asked ourselves when we started actually with rural census was, is it possible to do this automatically? Can we train a system to do this task, which is pretty complicated? Now, we can imagine that we can hire someone doing the task of sentiment analysis from the crowd, but for doing these tasks, we actually do need experts in sustainability. So this was something that we asked ourselves, can we do that? And as Yao mentioned, we are an interdisciplinary field, so we tried to bring together our expertise, and the answer turns out to be, yeah, up to a given extent, yes. Let's go to the next slide so we can see our example. So here, for example, what we would expect our automatic UPV classifier to understand is that from the extract we have here, we have actually three values which are expressed. We have the value of faith, so the woman is praying. We have the part about freedom of choice, so the freedom of being able to decide kind of like for yourself, for your body. And then we have the part of safety, because the woman is talking about the fact that she fears of basically dying in childbirth. So yeah, I hope this actually gives you kind of like an idea of how complicated this is in practice. And we had a very last slide to illustrate that with kind of like a more comprehensive example. So so far so good, but in real interviews, we really have long and complicated sentences, which can like bring together a lot of elements and a lot of different perspectives and a lot of values, which are kind of like interact with each other. And here we put, yeah, this last example for you to kind of like give you a hint of how difficult actually the task is, which we are trying to semi-automatize. This is an extract from an interview that was taken in Nepal, in a small rural village where Chowpadi is practiced. Chowpadi is a practice in which women and girls during menstruation are forced to live outside of their home. And they are forced to, and they are basically not allowed to eat meat and milk and all dairy products. So this woman is saying that when she menstruates, her family, the community, they keep her separated from the others, saying that we are impure. And then she adds that if discriminating would not be done, then drinking and eating inside house would be easier and fun. So what it's interesting because here in terms of value, we have a lot of different things. We have access to water, we have rights and freedom, we have unburdened, because she mentions that life would be easier if she would be allowed to stay inside her home. And then she also mentions pleasure and fun, so that life would be more pleasant to live. And then if we look at the particular topic of Chowpatty, so this kind of like practice that we were talking before, that sentiment itself is neutral because the text itself doesn't have a particular polarity. But if we dive a bit deeper, then we see that if we look at stance, we actually have kind of like a different stance conflicting with each other, which are reported. So this woman is reporting her own negative stance. So she would not like, she would like to be allowed to stay in her home, and she would like to be allowed not to practice Chowpatty. But community, the family, is not agreeing. So this is actually interesting, and I hope this gives you an idea of how complicated what we are trying to do actually is. And the very last slide for my part, so for the NLP more heavy part, let's say, was just to mention that we do not necessarily need machine learning models to start taking value and insights out of raw text. Something which is interesting here is how kind of like even relatively well-known visualization methods, such as word clouds, can be adapted and improved in order to basically show us a lot of different elements. So here, for example, you see the text that was said when referring to two particular UPV values, duty and reputation. And here it's interesting because we do not just have the size of the words telling us how often a specific word was used in the interviews, but we also have this color and kind of like the position element, which tells us two different demographics, so men and women, how much and how often they use such words. And this gives us actually an interesting hint of the vocabulary that different people use to express the same value. For example, from these, we know that actually women and men, they tend actually to use actually quite a different lexicon vocabulary when they talk about the same value. And here we did it with men and women, but you can imagine we could do it also with other kind of like demographic variables. So we could have kind of like young versus old people, or if we had a project in a refugee, so with refugees in Israel, and there we had two communities, Sudanese and Eritrean, and then we could actually try to really understand better or nicer in a sense, interaction of different needs and values. Okay, I think yeah, I talked way too much. I think it's
no, you talked a great, perfect amount of time, and it just says anecdote. It's interesting to look at this left side of the duty, that for women the duty is men, and for men the duty is children. So I guess it tells something to all of the men people in the audience. What do we actually mean for women? I think this is a good time to stop for questions. If anyone has, we have 5 minutes for questions. So feel free to either write in the chat or just unmute yourself and speak out. There was a lot of information coming in, and it's okay also to be, can be overwhelming, but feel really free to give any feedback. There's also going to be a time to ask questions at the end, after we see maybe how this whole comes together. Yeah. Okay, so I see nobody has any pressing questions. So keep in touch. And oh, okay, there are questions. Can you maybe give a quick overview of what the UPVs cover? And Ben asks, this is what Joaquin asks, and Ben asks, is it possible to never have a bias? Really, really good questions, guys. Costanza, do you want to touch on them briefly? We have like just a couple of minutes.
No, yeah, this is actually, those are two very interesting questions. With respect to the last one, bias are inevitable. So they in a sense, we have to accept that they are inevitable, but they might be mitigated or avoided if we know them. So in a sense, it's important to basically known the unknown, so you can at least try to make an effort to avoid them. And something which is important to notice is that bias do not only arise at the time of data collection. So clearly, if we have bias entering our pipeline in the stage of data collection, then they will influence all the NLP pipeline. But bias can also enter the annotation part, or even the modeling part. For this is also actually very important to when you develop a model and you test it and you evaluate it, to be to bring diversity into the team. Because if we have only people who are outside of the community itself, developing the model, implementing the system and training it, it might well be that our models are in a sense injecting unwanted biases into the task itself. With respect, so yeah, I don't think it's possible to never have a bias, but I think it is very important to know that this can happen. And this is also something that I think the AI community and the NLP as a part of the AI community is starting to realize and to make effort to fight against it. And with respect to the question about what the UPV cover, so the UPV is a framework which was developed on top of value theory. And value theory was developed in the context of the developed world, especially in the context of marketing. So to have a way to basically understand what is important for a person or for a group or for a community. And it defines, as we were saying before, kind of like a set of values, which then have been adapted as part of the PhD. I think it was a PhD at Cambridge University, a PhD in engineering for sustainable development. It was adapted to the context of communities in developing countries. And I think there is a very powerful message here, that is that sometimes we have, as experts, sustainability experts, it kind of like goes a bit in the direction of what Josephine was saying. We assume that we studied a specific area and that we know what the people need, but people in a developing country are no different than people in the developed world. So they do have preferences, needs, values, and they do know what they need. So it's important to find a way to, in a sense, structure it and basically extract those values and those needs from raw text. I hope this was clear.
Yes, thank you. So we will move forward, because I think that's a really good segue for our next thing I want to show you. So we heard amazing stuff from an NLP expert, AI expert, about all these models that bring together years of experience and in technology, and bring together also insights from sustainability experts and international development experts. At Raw Senses, our vision is to make this whole thing accessible. So to allow people that are not expert in NLP, and to allow people that are not expert in social scientists and statistics and analyzing text and all that, to allow everyone to listen better to people. It's that simple. And this is our mission. And I want to share here on this group, for the first time, the NLP dashboard that we are building, that is encapsulating most of the exciting NLP analysis that Stances showed us. And this is just a snapshot. This is a service that's going to launch in late June, and people here will have a chance also to subscribe to hear updates as we go along. But I just want to explain what's happening here. This is the energy dashboard. So on the top of the screen, we can see different energy appliances. So this is specifically for a project we are doing with an organization called Efficiency for Access. And each appliance, so we see a fridge, a TV, a grain mill, computer, and so on, has a specific popularity, how much this specific appliance is popular. And then when you choose the fridge that is selected in this case, you can see three elements. First, for the positive sentiment, so all the things that people think positively about in green in the first row, and then the negative sentiment. So we can see that for the fridge, the perceived value, the UPV that we saw before, about the fridge is food security, accessibility to services, functionality, income, and comfort, things that we might not always acknowledge. And then the word cloud shows us what kind of words people use when they describe the fridge in a positive way. And we can also see the text that people use. So this is real text that people in Uganda and India wrote when they refer to a fridge as part of our project. And same thing in the negative sense. So we can see the user perceived value about the fridge that is negative, that is the capital cost, the expenditure, durability. And again, the word cloud that gives us a really easy, without understanding all the technicalities of the NLP, really easy, we understand, okay, why is the fridge positive? Why is the fridge negative? And this can help me if whether I'm selling fridges or I want to make solar fridges more adopted, or if I want to fix issues in current fridges, or I want to introduce new energy interventions in this community. And there is also this is specifically for male people in these ages and this amount of income. But we can also compare different communities and different segments to get more deep into listening to the communities. So this is coming up, and stay tuned for that. Before we go, I want to quickly touch on the limitations, because we are dealing here with some cutting edge technologies, and there are still things we need to solve and we need to work. And this is what we do at Rural Senses. So first of all, the human factor. So not everything a machine can tell. We still need a human in the process when analyzing the text, whether it's a very specific cultural reference, or whether it is something that is very unique to the local language or something like that. So this is why we have in our data analysis always people that are local. So local people collect the data, local people help to analyze the data, that they do some of the analysis work, but significantly less than what they would need to do if we won't have the NLP. Cross-culture is also something that we are working, because when the algorithms are trained on a specific community, they are not necessarily will work on a different country or a different context. So this is still something we need to retrain the algorithm for different communities. So currently we work in Uganda, India, Nepal, and Ethiopia. So in these communities, we have already quite established data, but every time we need to move to a different community, things need to be retrained. Data ownership. So this is something really important for us. Who owns this data? Who are we as Rural Senses? So we see ourselves very differently than what most of the data companies that we know, from Google to Amazon, etc. And we are enablers of data. We are connecting between communities and organizations, and between communities and communities. And in that sense, the owners of the data are the communities. And that means they have the agency to decide whether they want to share their data, whether they want to opt out after they share the data, but also to benefit and to enjoy. If there is a lot of value, financial value in data, they profit and they enjoy the financial benefits. Privacy protection is a big issue when we talk with data, and specifically with qualitative data, because it's not enough sometimes to remove the name or to remove that, because sometimes the text itself contains data that might reveal the person, like the name of the town or the name of the neighbor or the name of the local shop. So this is something also that requires extra attention, and we are looking into that. And AI ethics and fairness is in all kinds of analysis. We can see that biases are introduced by the algorithm. And if many people refer to salt in one community as something negative, then in the other community, it will be automatically classified as negative. And we can think the same thing about when it comes to ethnicities or genders and so on. So this is also something we are working on. Let's see how we're doing by time. We have 3 minutes, so I'll give time for questions. But before that, I really want to share that if you want to get access to this dashboard and this NLP platform that we show that can either be used by data that you're already collecting if you're working with communities, or with new data that we help you collect, feel free to write your email in the chat and we'll add you to the mailing list where we notify about our development. And as I mentioned, we're going live in the end of June. If you want more information, it's interesting for you, just want to have a chat, we are very free. I wrote here my email, but it's also applicable if you want to chat with Costanza or with Josephine. So feel free to share your email and to send us an email. So that's it. I want to thank everybody really much. We have 2 minutes for questions. I saw there was one question left before. Yeah, and if anyone else wants to ask any more questions, feel free to write it on the chat or break the silence and speak out. Okay, so Costanza, Josephine, did you follow on any of the questions? Can you help me here?
Yeah.
I think yes. Oh, sorry, Costanza.
No, sorry, Josie, interrupted you.
I think someone asked about the spam information we gather comes from different methods of the PDF and app, and how that transition from whatever the method is to the server. Do we have any problems there? And as I think I said, and Constance already mentioned, yes, there are issues, but we do our best, because at every stage, as we mentioned, there is a problem of distorting the data from its original, or losing some meaning. Like if it came from a natural language in the app, and then maybe you're using Google to translate it into your server, you can't see what the problem can be there. Many people, the Google really loses a lot of meaning. If it you even got someone to just upload it to your there could be some technical issues and some things are missed, or some meaning is lost. So, but at the point, as we said again, is just being aware that this could happen, and then to get mitigation ways to mitigate it. If coming from a PDF, how do I extract it from a PDF into the server smoothly? If it's is there an intermediate stage I need to put in? If it's coming from an app or phone, is it uploaded directly to the database, and in which format? So all these questions, as data collectors, or as NLP experts, or whether if you're a database administrator, these are questions that we need to ask ourselves, because at the end of the day, the goal is to make sure that you keep the voice of the person you collected this data from alive until it comes to give an insight, that you do not lose it along the way with whatever the bias or distortion of it, that at the end, it's the voice of the other person that you've done your very best to represent, and not distort it, because once we distort it, then whatever solution or the project, or if we are doing impact evaluation, whatever, it will be misleading, or the solution will not be the right for the community. That's what I could say. I don't know if I've answered that person right.
Thank you, Josephine. And I think we need to wrap up the time, but thank you for joining us, and thank you for participating. Thank you for being who you are. And I invite you to join other talks in the Catalyst Change Week. There are quite amazing stuff happening, so stay tuned. It was a pleasure being with you, and thank you. Bye.